Hey, everybody, welcome back to another daily drop on the Heel Report, which is a part of Tar Heel 24/7 in the CBS Sports Network. I'm Tar Heel 24/7 publisher Andrew Jones. He is David Zisk, our basketball recruiting director and basketball analyst, longtime high school, college, and AAU coach. And David, you and I have not talked since before the Duke game, or we've talked, but we haven't done a podcast since before the Duke game. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on what you've seen, maybe some differences in the team, pick up on some of the mannerisms that we've discussed and that I certainly have noted, Noah has noted that we've seen in person with this team, some differences, and just kind of go from there. We will discuss their bracket. They're part of the bracket for this weekend with VCU coming up Thursday. And if the Tar Heels win, they'll play either Penn or Illinois on Saturday for a shot to go to the Sweet 16. We'll hit a little bit on that. But more than anything, I want to talk about where the team is right now. And after that, we'll also I'll throw it your way and see. You can tell everybody what you think Carolina has to do to actually be a matchup problem for other teams, which would mean playing to their strengths. What are their strengths now that they know Caleb Wilson is not coming back? So first of all, the Duke game, the 30-6 run, they're down 25. And then they make a little push at the end after Duke, I think, turned it off. They're down 18 in the second half with Clemson. Clemson had a 19-5 run inside of a 49-26 stretch. They're up 18. Carolina did have a mad rush at the end. I think Clemson contributed a lot to that. But they did close it to 1. So what are your thoughts on what you saw in the last 2 games from this team that make you believe perhaps the difference in knowing that Caleb's not coming back as opposed to this team, the way they played when they expected him to come back? What are some discernible differences for you?
I wonder if there was just like this fog that hung over the team when it was announced that he wasn't coming back, because you've got to remember, even with a fan base, there was such a positivity because you felt like the team was picking up a little depth with the way Zayden High was playing, with the way some of the guards from time to time, and it is still a scoring by committee. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason who it's going to be. But you knew you had guys that you could count on, in particularly Henry Vasar, Seth Trimble, and then you get Caleb Wilson back. And I think I talked about it the last time we had a podcast, that there was a national analyst, and I don't even remember who it was, but he said, we've got to start taking North Carolina seriously, that if things fall right for them, they could go make a deep run, maybe to the Final Four. Well, things have fallen anything but that way. Obviously, with the injury to Caleb Wilson, they're 0-2 since then. And the thing that I had worried about most, especially with maybe you could say Hubert Davis with his tenure and the way it's perceived among fans, among alumni, most importantly, maybe among the powers that be at the University of North Carolina, is that you didn't want to fight your way out the first weekend and have that seed continue to drop. And now here you are, if you get through the first weekend, it's only a 2.5-point spread on the opening game, and then you run into a 3 seed, a really good 3 seed, who's been borderline top 10 all year. And then you're looking at 3 times in 4 years you've not been out of the first round. So you've got all that hanging over you. And then with the expectations of the fan base, with all the banners, you know what's expected. It's almost like they just ran into a wall. They did it the last game at Duke. And I think we understand, even with the injuries, what Duke has. And when they get everybody back, they're going to be a legitimate top threat to win the tournament this year, one of the best 3 or 4 teams. But as far as North Carolina goes, you run into that at Duke. They were ready to play that game after they won in Chapel Hill. Clemson was ready too. Yeah. And I think you saw it the next game against Duke. And I understand it's a bad look for North Carolina to lose to Clemson, and Duke manhandle them without 2 starters the way they did in the next game. But I also think Brad Brownell shot about every bullet that whole team he did. He was very emotional after the win, the fist pump. He wanted to beat North Carolina. They felt like they gave it away in Chapel Hill. He was ready. They were scouted. So I think North Carolina took some of that out of them just emotionally, if nothing else, because Clemson never beats North Carolina, and that was a big win for them.
Yeah.
So now you look, you ran into two physical teams, two teams that defend, two teams who guarded differently in a way. They had some similarities, but they guarded differently in a way. And they both just really did a number on North Carolina offensively. And then you get Boozer had a huge game against the Tar Heels. He really knocked Vasar around the entire game, but the guards still got theirs. And then you get into Clemson, the guards get theirs to go pretty well wherever they want to go. Nick Davidson warmed up from the outside. They do it really without their best big. And for whatever reason, R.J. Godfrey was on the bench for the last 6 or 7 minutes of that game. So you really, I think, got North Carolina right now just – I don't know if they circled the wagons here this week. I don't know if they're reeling. I don't think any of us really know where they stand. And, you know, that's probably the interesting – I don't know if it's interesting or it's depressing. We just don't know where they stand going into the NCAA tournament mentally. I think we know what we've got with the team, but where are they at mentally? Because I'm telling you, I've watched VCU, and I think Vegas probably knows something here, and they usually do. And a guy told me the first time I went out there, he said, these casinos out here and all these high rises, they weren't built because they lose, you know, so they know more than anybody. And I work with a guy who's a gambler, and he's really good at it. And he asked me today, he said, why in the world is North Carolina only a 2.5-point favorite over a team that if they had not won their league would have not gotten that large bid? They wouldn't have been considered for the NCAA tournament. And their spread's only 2.5. And I ran some of these things by him and said, you know, I think there's a large contingent right now that just thinks that mentally this team's very fragile. Others may think they've already thrown in the towel. I don't know. You know, we're going to see in this first round. But, man, I think there's more questions to be answered about the mental space of this team. We know what they are as a team. We know what they are physically.
Yeah.
Where are they at mentally?
Yeah, I don't think they've thrown in the towel. I think a team could give the appearance that they have without actually doing so. My read, and it's their play, their mannerisms during dead balls, and obviously talking to them after the games and being in that locker room last Thursday night, is that they got a gut punch, multiple gut punches, and it takes the wind out of you. And what happens when you get the gun punch? You're ever like this. Duke came up and delivered the blow. Clemson delivered a decent blow, but not enough. That's why Carolina cut the thing to 1. But I think that they were rattled emotionally, psychologically. They were making progress to meet Caleb. And you and I had talked that thought maybe this club was in position to surprise some people and make a run. And they had it all pulled away. And here's the other thing, too. And I told you this on the phone here a couple of days ago. And I've mentioned this on some podcasts, but what really grabbed me was how the adults in the program, how they took Caleb's injury. It shook them, and I think that trickled down. Now, by the time they take the court on Thursday, it will have been almost a week since they'd played a game. That's a lot of time for a proud program with kids that went there understanding what they were getting into. And with Henry Vasar, I think really growing to the voice of this team, we saw that in Charlotte for sure, that they could cut the cord. They could have already cut the cord to what happened. And Hubert's had enough time to say, okay, guys, we got to dance with who we are. And we're still a pretty good team. We did beat Louisville. We did beat Clemson, et cetera, and get their minds right to march forward. How difficult a job is that for a head coach, given the
Well, can I ask you, let me ask you what you think about that, because we have not discussed this privately. Yeah. And the first time we've ever brought it up between us. So let me ask you, do you feel like, because you're right there with them, do you think that having a week off is a good thing for them, or looking at where they were at last week?
I don't think it hurts because they have to play another game. So they have a choice, and they've had plenty of time to – I don't know how much time they spent on looking at the garbage from those two games, because I would say largely you had, 80 minutes of basketball. I would say they were pretty bad for about 65 minutes, 60 minutes at the time. So I don't know how much time they spent looking at that stuff, but they've had an awful lot of time to become accountable sort of on an individual basis. A couple of guys chatting here, a couple of guys walking out to their car there, and commenting with each other, discussing with each other some of the messages that Hubert has said. Hubert has a bag of messages that's not super big. And I think sometimes guys hear it so much during the course of the year that they don't hear it as much at times. It's like in any organization, whether it's a parent, whether it's a boss, or whatever the case may be, you need to have others deliver the same message and deliver it in different ways. And I do think something that I took from the Clemson game, sitting right behind the bench, is that Henry has grown into a guy that can do that. He's more vocal than Seth. Seth has not been super, super vocal. Henry was that guy. He was calling him out. He was throwing the F-bombs out there and everything. And he played like he backed it up by his effort on the floor. He's also a guy who's been there not quite 12 months, but completely gets this. He gets what they're playing for. He understands the standard. So if Henry has become the voice of this team in the last week, I expect them to come out ready to play. Now, I don't think they've thrown in the towel. I just think that their psyche has been significantly damaged. And it's hit their confidence a little bit because they weren't getting one of the best players in the country and the most talented player the program's had in a while. They weren't getting him back. So they had to recalibrate. And while you would want to win in the ACC tournament, maybe going out Thursday gives them a little bit more time to recalibrate and be ready to roll. I think they'll have a skip in their step against VCU. That doesn't mean they're going to beat VCU, because VCU is all about that. But if they do and they execute well and Hubert lets them attack and play on their instincts, because, when they come back in these games, it's all instincts on offense. It's not a bunch of sets that slow everything down. If he allows them to play that way, play fast, I think they can get through the first round. The second round, they're going to have to try to match up or create some matchup issues for Illinois. Not sure how that will work. Or Penn. Penn's not garbage. So but we got to stay with the first game here. First things first. I think this team has been tight enough all year, and legitimate chemistry, smart kids that know what they're in for, that it's the NCAA tournament. It's a new lease on life. Seth did say after the game a couple times, 0-0, 0-0, everyone's 0-0. Mm-hmm. Now, 0-0 for a lot of teams is going to look different than 0-0 for North Carolina because they're not the same team. But I have enough of a belief in this group that there's a chance they come out ready to play. If they're not, and they've just been – the uppercuts after the gut punches have been too severe, then they'll get run out in the first round. It's possible because a lot of teams that sort of limp into the postseason, the NCAA tournament, don't get right. Teams don't always carry being hot into the NCAA tournament, but more often teams that are struggling, they carry that in the NCAA tournament. They go out pretty early. Rarely do teams look like they're discombobulated mess going in and suddenly get right. That doesn't happen very often.
Well, you asked me how hard is that as a coach. I think the 0-0 part is what should make it a little easier because you're not asking them to go on a road game to Virginia or Miami or Duke or somewhere like where it's a regular season game, another one. Now it's a new season. And I've told you the last time that we did a podcast here that what we always did was generally we would say, okay, you've got 3 goals as a team. You set the goals. This is player driven. These are your goals. You tell us what it is, and then we'll hold you to the standard. You had a preseason goal. You had a regular season goal. You had a postseason goal. You played 2 of the 3. You've made it to the postseason. Now you remind them of the goals that they set. And you, like I said, the standard is there. You push them toward that. But you're also, I don't think this is a situation where you have to use gimmicks. You can go back and look. Hubert could take them back to the first year he was here and they were an 8 seed. He could go back in the past where maybe at other times North Carolina was not the seed that they thought they would usually be, and maybe didn't have the year that they were used to having, but they did make a run the NCAA tournament, whether it be under Dean Smith or whoever. So, you've got that to draw on. But I think most importantly, like I said, you just say, hey, we've got grown men in this locker room. We're all grown men here. You guys are getting paid to play. You're basically professionals. Handle your business professionally, and let's refocus. And now let's get ready for the tournament. And I think just being able to step back and breathe like you were talking about, but the focus changes now that, that you're in a tournament. I don't even think you're thinking about one and done. We're playing for our lives here. Loser goes home and all that. I think it's just let's recalibrate, and move ahead because we still have lofty goals.
Yeah, but how hard is that? How hard is that when you're asking a team to do that without someone that they thought was going to kind of take them up, not just one notch, but a couple of notches?
I don't know if this is the way you want to address it or not. I'd be like, screw that. Duke won an ACC tournament down 2 stars.
100%.
I don't want to hear it. So it's next man.
Can you say? Let me jump in. Can you say, guys? No disrespect to Caleb, we love him. We all cried tears together when we found out he was out for the season. But he is not part of the equation on the court now. We've got to move on and forget the fact that Caleb was once a part of things. He's a great cheerleader over there, but he's not on the court. We must move forward without him, and let's go win for him.
Yeah, and like I said, the old NFL phrase, next man up. And we used that as far back as high school when guys got hurt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That, individuals go down. So, the guys that we're addressing here in the locker room and we're looking at eye to eye, you're the ones that are, you've taken the baton, you've thrown the flag to you, you're carrying it, and, you are the guys. We're not waiting on somebody else to come in. So are you good enough or are you not? We've got faith in you or we wouldn't recruited you to be here. So I just think all that's a pride matter and a confidence matter. I'm going to tell you this, if I was good enough to play at the University of North Carolina and I got recruited there and Caleb got hurt and this was my opportunity, you wouldn't have to bring in some type of magician or something to get me fired, make me believe or
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, have SEALs jump through hoops or something like that. You wouldn't have to I think just being in that situation, I would want to be all right. I'm going to be remembered here. Good or bad, people care. This is not some other Clemson or no offense to anybody, but somebody like that who they'll forget about, in a year or two and look on the football season and look for their next team. People at North Carolina, the fan bases and all that, they remember these teams for decades. You can go back and pull out names and people will know who you're talking about that people in other parts of the country have never heard of. But and a lot of that's done through March Madness, through the tournaments. This is where legends are built.
Carolina has been an 8 seed, I think 5 times in their history. One in 1990 under Dean Smith. They got to the Sweet 16, and in the second round, they knocked off the top overall seed, which was Billy Tubbs in Oklahoma. That was a Rick Fox bank shot that won it. Hubert on the court with the pass, by the way. And then in 2000, 10 years later, a team that ended up the second losingest team in school history and program history to that point, 2000, Ed Cota and Joseph Forte, Chris Lang, Brendan Haywood, Jason Capel, they got to the Final Four. They beat the number 1 seed in the second round, the 4 seed in the Sweet 16, and a guy named Bill Self in Tulsa in the regional final. And they ended up losing to Florida in the Final Four. And then just, 4 years ago, as an 8 seed, they beat the defending national champions and 1 seed in the second round, took care of UCLA, who was in the Final Four the year before in the Sweet 16, got a break with St. Peter's, and they ended Coach K's career in the Final Four. Had a 15-point lead at the half. So this
what year was it again that they beat Oklahoma?
1990.
if I'm not mistaken,
That was in Austin,
the
Texas.
That was the year that I was in watching the regional games in Thompson Bowling and Knoxville, and Georgia Tech played LSU. And it was the Georgia Tech team with Malcolm Mackey and those guys. And LSU had Chris Jackson and Shaq. And Georgia Tech got them in the second half. But they announced the score that North Carolina had beat Oklahoma. And the Georgia Tech crowd just started. There was a lot of them there. That was a different day back then. They erupted ACC. And that gym just shook with the Georgia Tech fans chanting ACC.
Yeah, that Lethal Weapon 3. Dennis Scott, Kenny Anderson, Brian Oliver. Dennis Scott does a lot of ACC games now. Yeah, so 3 times as an 8 seed, they beat the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, number 1 seed defending national champs, and then, of course, number 1 seed Stanford, which was in 2000. That's when Mike Montgomery had a great program at Stanford. People would be stunned now to find out that Stanford was one of the top programs in the country for a while. So the precedent is there. And I think one of the reasons this program has done that before is what you were saying earlier, the pride factor. Yeah. You go to North Carolina for a reason. The guy that maybe chooses to go to West Virginia, and I'm not disrespecting West Virginia, but it is a different bird, as opposed to North Carolina. The guy that goes to North Carolina knows he's got to fight to get on the court. He's got to play to stay on the court by and large. It's sort of like the football player that goes to North Carolina as opposed to the one that goes to Alabama. The guy that goes to Bama knows he's got to really work hard. Sometimes a 4-star goes to North Carolina. So I've been told by assistant coaches in the past. Sometimes they kind of think it's going to be handed to them a little bit, or it's going to be a little bit easier. So there is that DNA of the kind of dude that would play to North Carolina. And that has found itself in 90, in 2000, and in 2022. Now, this club's a 6 seed. And when you look at what's in front of them, this is not as challenging an opponent, say, what they had in 2022. Marquette was pretty good. Everybody said Marquette was going to outrun Carolina. Shaka Smart was going to press them to death and stuff like that. It didn't happen. Carolina thumped them. In 1990, they played. You remember Southwest Missouri State when they used to be really good? And Missouri Valley Conference was a good program. People thought, man, they're not going to be able to deal with their guards because Carolina's not that athletic, and they went ahead and took care of them as well. So when you look ahead, what kind of Carolina team do you need to see, not specifically just against VCU, but you need to see early to know, A, these guys are ready to go, B, what they're doing is sustainable?
Just the toughness factor. They're going to have to knock down some shots. And you go back to the Duke game and the Clemson game, specifically Clemson game, they had some good looks and couldn't knock down anything. I mean, nothing. There, and I don't want to call any players out, but I just want to use an example. If Jonathan Powell gets a corner shot, I think it's going in a lot of times. He's really good from the corner. He had a couple of looks in the corner against Clemson. Nobody was making anything.
Yeah.
So until the last 3.5 minutes. So I think they're going to have some of those. Just not getting lethargic in the backcourt. And I think a lot of that, the shot making breeds, it shouldn't do this. This is what worries me about the team. But I think a lot of times shot making influences the effort. And as a coach, you never want that. You want it to be the other way around. You're going to play hard, and you're going to take the fight to the other team, even if you don't make shots, if you miss every shot that you throw up. But I think a lot of times when they really get cold, you can see it just they kind of go into a malaise. And they don't need that to happen. But they need to make open shots. They need to challenge, no defensive breakdowns. They need to challenge physically on both ends. And then Henry Vesar's got to take over. And you're going to have to get the ball. And I'm thinking really about the opening round because I do think that's the advantage. I don't think that VCU can match up with him right there. So it needs to go into him. I'd like to see Jaron Stevenson or High, one of those guys show consistency and have a 12-point, 10-rebound game, and not miss layups. I would love for them to do that. But I just want to see VCU's got good guards, and they've got a bunch of them. As I said, they kind of remind me of they're deeper than St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure had good guards, but they're deeper than the Bonnies. ETSU, kind of some of those teams that had a bunch of these guards. VCU's got several of them, and they keep coming at you in waves, and they like to get to the rim, and they can shoot, and they're quick. So you're just going to have to match that energy level and even surpass it, and then you do have the advantage inside. So take advantage of that advantage.
The game plan early has to be Henry, and you could.
Can I say one other thing too?
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get behind. And that's been something with this team, not only this year, but last year as well. And that is you look up and it's his first half, just it's drudgery. And you look up and they're down double figures, and all of a sudden they have to jump in a full court press the second half to come back. And they're trying to do that in way. I mean, what we saw against Clemson, I was not surprised that they come back against Clemson. They always come back. But it wasn't enough. They can't. I don't want to look up and find out that they're down 12, to VCU at the half, because I don't know. They make that run. I don't know if it would be enough. That's when you find out how fragile they are. They need to come out and jump on them in the first half. I guess that would be the main thing I would look for.
I would think that happens if two reasons that would happen. One, VCU sells out, not letting Henry get involved, and then the other guys struggle. And the other end would be that they don't defend the drive. They don't defend the dribble well. And Seth said last Thursday, he said, look, 100%, I'm paraphrasing, it 100% starts with defense for us because, and Hubert has said this before, but it was good to hear Seth saying the way he did. If you get a stop, he said, first of all, if you get a stop and they don't score, you have a chance to get down the court and get into something before the opponent can set up defensively. If they score, you got to pull the ball out of the net. You got to go out of bounds, inbound it. And by the time you cross midcourt, the other team is set defensively. So, if you're a team that struggles at times scoring, if you can get those advantages or get them backpedaling or get them moving in the wrong direction and attack more, then that's advantage. Although sometimes they pull up. Sometimes they don't take advantage of that. That's been a concern.
And I have to ask this too. We talk about the players. We've not mentioned the coaching staff yet.
No, we're not there yet.
I think Hubert Davis has got more as the season's gone on, got more to calling sets and slowing this thing down. And we've spoken about it, the trust factor that he has in his team. You brought that up before anybody, that it was key this year that he trusts his players. So I go back here. You said he took it harder than anybody with Caleb Wilson. And I can see just watching him the last few games, he's been on edge during games. Been on edge. And I see the offensive attack slowing down and more sets. So you talk about the players having that energy and getting some quick buckets and turning defense to offense. Does he coach it that way, or does he really tighten up and overcoach this thing?
If he does that, they're going to have a significantly more difficult time beating VCU. Mm-hmm. They're North Carolina. I have a ton of respect for VCU's program. I grew up in Virginia. I knew a lot of people that went there. It's been a good program going back to the 80s. I remember they were a 4 seed one year, 5 seed when they had Rolando Lamb.
I want to think that they've had, if I heard this correct, I'll go back. I'm positive on this because I've watched the Richmond game twice, and I heard an announcer say it, that they've had 26 straight winning seasons, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a good program. It's become the cradle of coaches, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It really has. And they got a great culture there. It's a good area to recruit from. And they got kids that can play ball. Kenny Williams had committed to VCU before he ended up flipping to Carolina. And so people are like, man, they're going to take a guy that was committed to VCU. I'm like, hey, they were in the Final Four in 2011. They got there after starting in Dayton. I agree with you about Hubert. He's got to let his guys play against VCU. North Carolina, their VCU should be able to attack and beat them. You should be better. So don't pull back and give them opportunities to sniff out possessions that opponents know is coming. They know that those things are coming. I've told you before and said on podcasts, Michigan State was calling them out back in Fort Myers. Clemson knew it was coming. So and also you allow the defense to dictate some. I thought one of the mistakes they made against Clemson and Duke was they allowed Duke and Clemson to push the offense out. And they had no counter for that. And when they did that, they couldn't run their sets. The passing lanes weren't there. Passes that were attempted were kind of screwy and led to some breakaways, some turnovers and breakaways for both teams. They must avoid that. And I think you avoid that by pushing. You don't have to go hair on fire, Nolan Richardson, 40 minutes of hell back in the 90s at Arkansas, but you've got to be aggressive because you could always kick it back out. You can always pull up, but you've got to be aggressive to see if something opens there. And this team is at its best when they're pushing it and they're kicking out. That's when they make threes. They're a catch-and-shoot 3 team. They don't shoot the ball well off the dribble. Luka Bogovac is Exhibit A. Brad Brownell said after the game in Chapel Hill that he is elite coming around the corner in a catch-and-shoot. But Brad didn't say this, but I know their staff knows it. He's not elite when he has to dribble and take the shot. So that's what Carolina has to do. Get more catch-and-shoot stuff, more rhythm stuff. And Hubert doesn't want them taking a ton of threes, David, but if they take threes like that, he'll be a lot happier because they're going to go in. And he was lamenting a lot early in that game the other night about how many three-pointers they attempted, and they were attempting them without Henry even getting touches sometimes. If Henry gets a touch and they end up with a 3, I think he'll be happy with it. But if they end up with a 3, especially if it's a dribble 3, and Henry doesn't get a touch in that possession, he's not going to be happy. So you're right. How Hubert coaches, if he overcoaches early, I think that's going to be a problem as well.
And, talking about the offense, just looking at VCU's defense, I've gone back, I've watched the game yesterday, the championship game. I've watched it twice. Maybe I said Richmond earlier. If I did, I'm sorry,
Dayton.
Against Dayton. And
by the way, they beat Dayton 3 times.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So it looked to me like they're a defense that kind of adjust. I watched them early on, and I thought they chased a lot. I thought sometimes they got hung up in ball screens and handoffs about whether to switch or whether or not to switch. They get face cut a lot. But North Carolina really doesn't do a lot of that where they're doing ball side back cuts to the rim. They may want to put in some of that stuff because it was like every time they get face cut. And I think that's there. They're going to guard the ball screens in different ways. They may drop. They may switch. To me, it looked like they only switched when they had to, when they were beaten. But sometimes that doesn't get communicated. But I thought once they got into the game and they kind of got in the flow defensively and saw it, and they see what the other team does, that they got adjusted. So I feel that's one reason North Carolina's got to jump on them. But like I said, I think Henry will be too big for whatever they've got inside. Now, they're going to post double. They post doubled, in the game Sunday, in the championship game Sunday against Dayton. And Dayton's not nearly the team inside that they don't have a Henry Vasar. And they doubled every post touch when he did go in there. So North Carolina's got to be ready for that. Henry's got to be sharp getting the ball out. He is not as good as Caleb Wilson at getting the ball out of the double.
Yeah.
It kind of hurt them in some games there late. They turned it over a lot out of the double team. They got to be sharp.
He had 6 against Clemson.
Yeah. So, VCU's going to come at him. They're going to try to quick. They're going to try to draw turnovers. They're going to watch him. They're going to get the pass to the lane. Yeah, I think it's going to come down to one or two things. Either he turns the ball over. If you don't turn it over, I think you get an open 3. And then North Carolina's got to make those. So they're going to have to – I think they're going to have a lot of catch and shoot opportunities out of the post touch because VCU is going to double every one of them.
I think there's an opportunity to use the baseline and have some bigs cut like Jaron using the baseline or even Zayden using the baseline with some stuff to get from the doubles if Henry knows it's there. But one of the problems I have, especially with Caleb, is better than Henry at getting the ball out and getting out quickly and also making the defense move even on the double. He could pull the double out even further, open up more cutting lanes after he always talked about the hockey assist, the second pass, the one after his that leads to a bucket. But with Henry, they stand and watch when he gets doubled too much. They've got to move and force the defense to move, and someone's got to go meet the ball. One of the things that Derek Dixon is still growing to do as a point guard is sometimes you got to go get the ball. If a dude's stuck, if he's in a double and there's not much there, you got to go get the ball. And I don't see that from this team very often. You get a little stagnant. And some of Henry's turnovers should be considered team turnovers because they're not helping him any. They're not improving. They're not lessening the degree of difficulty on him getting
one of the
ball.
big things, though, that really helped Caleb Wilson when he was doubled was Henry, because they had a set against it, and that would be Henry lane cutting, rim cutting from the top of the key, making a hard cut, and if he would have to get tagged by that backside defender. If he didn't get tagged, he had the rim run and the pass in there for the dunk. If he got tagged, they skipped it over the top. And so, like you spoke about the cut, so you don't have a Henry cutting. Henry's got the ball. So whether it's Zayden High or whether it's Jaron Stevenson, I think it starts on them. They, like you say, they've got to cut with authority right there, because a lot of times that double's coming from the other post. I mean, you don't want to try – you can't trap him with somebody 5'11". You have to throw size at him with another guy. So I think that's a key too. Henry was really good off the ball when Caleb got trapped. He opened that up. So and it goes back, Caleb knew what was coming. You could see Caleb. He already had it figured out before he ever threw the ball. Yeah. He knew where everybody was at. And it looks to me with all this, like you're talking about, when Henry gets trapped, he's holding the ball and he's looking. He's got it over his head, and he's trying to decide where to go. It's too late then. You know, like I said, Caleb already had it dissected.
Zayden High is a pretty good athlete, and I think Zayden High can be very effective in that.
He's got to go back to what? He's got to go back to Zayden High when Caleb first went down, because he's not been nearly as effective here in about the last week and a half.
Yeah, I agree. And well, this is an opportunity maybe for him to get some of those kind of buckets to get him going as well. Defensively, David, VCU is a club that will attack. Their guards will attack. Teams that have guards that can attack from anywhere on the floor have had
They're going to play pure 5 out, Andrew. I mean, they are just going to put 5 guys around the arc.
Yeah, and they're going to try to drive and kick and do a lot of that, right?
Yes.
I've seen them play.
So weaves, they're going to run weaves. They'll run some stuff where everybody's moving. They'll get into the ball screen. And then it's like a dribble drive. I'm going to drive from the wing. The ball screen's most of the time going to be from the top. So I'm going to dribble to the wing. I'm going to try to get deep 2 feet into the paint. And they want it. They get to the rim a lot. Yep. So now I do think Henry will back off and take care of some of that. So I want to get into the rim with 2 feet, draw the help, kick to the other side. They've got the 3. And if they don't have the 3, they're going to attack the closeout. They're going to drive middle from the opposite side. They're going to kick opposite. They keep doing it until they get something. A lot of their threes are going to come off that action where it's a drive and kick.
And the drive is there if you blitz the switch.
Yes.
We've seen that. So,
and they'll flatten it out. So, that, like I said, they set a lot of them in the middle of the floor, and they flatten it out, and they make you make a decision. So they are they shoot 36.7% from a 3 on a year. They are a good 3-point shooting team. You know, I look at the 3-point percentage. Terrence Hill, 35.5%. He's made 71 on a year. Jadrian Tracy, 37.7%. He's made 61 on a year. Nick Lewis, he really got hot in the championship game. 36.8%. He's made 46. Brandon Jennings, 43.4%. Michael Bell, 50% from 3. Ahmad Noel, 41.4%. They've got a lot of these guards look alike for them, and they can put the ball on the floor, and just about every one of them can shoot it.
Does it make you think having 3 guys that could go off kind of make you think a little bit about Cal, a little bit about Stanford, a little bit about SMU? And Andy Enfield at SMU, Mark Madsen at Cal both said that they were blitzing the screens. They knew they could do that, and they could get a lot of what they wanted. If Henry backs off, they kick it out, wide open 3. That, to me, is the concern for this team against anybody they play, but especially a club like this. So if you're sitting in the conference room with Hubert and Sean May and Brad Frederick and Jeff Lebo and Marcus Page, Eric Hoots, Pat Sullivan, that whole group, are you saying, hey, Hubert, let's not switch everything? Maybe you could switch certain things that are obvious with some of those high ball screens. You could switch and recover. This team doesn't recover. I was watching Duke the other night switch a few things, and they recovered so quickly, so well, that they didn't really miss anything on it. There was nothing to exploit by Virginia offensively. Or how do you approach this? Because pretty much they're going to switch a lot of it. They don't always switch everything, but they're going to switch a lot of it. Is what you've seen from this team defensively, their base principle defensively, is that a problem going into this game?
They will hand it off a lot in a weave and run the ball screens from the top, but they attack a lot one-on-one. So they've got it spread out five. They've got two corners, two wings, and a guy at the top. They've got equilibrium across as far as where you're lined up on the floor. And they just like to go a lot one-on-one. Like I said, and they'll do a lot of that without the screens. So you've got to be matched up right there. Here's the thing. If you play like you've played and Henry drops, so they're not going to switch Henry, and they're going to switch everybody else, let's say. So if Henry drops, and I can see the thinking about that, number one, we dropped all year. Number two, the guards want to get to the rim so much. Henry can make a big difference in front of the rim. He could take away a big part of what they do just by having a 7-1 rim protector. And I think I can't overemphasize that enough. That would be the case. But the thing about it, if he does that, the pop's wide open. I go back to the Clemson game. If Nick Davidson makes and he's like a 36% three-point shooter on the year. If he would have made anything in Chapel Hill, they'd probably beat North Carolina. And that was something we watched closely. And he didn't make anything, and North Carolina escaped. Well, he made just about everything in the ACC tournament when they played. And it was wide open. You remember I told you the key to that game would be Nick Davidson, whether he makes threes.
Yeah, 100%. You did.
So I go back to this game and I look at Lazar Djokovic. He's a 6'11". He's a 35.6 three-point shooter. Now, he's only shot 59 on a year in 33 games, so he's not even taking 2 a game. But he is when he does shoot, he's 21 for 59. It's going to be big if he gets in foul trouble, because he got in foul trouble against Dayton in the championship game. I mean, he was like 3 minutes in. He's on the bench. So they replace him with 2 6'8". One shoots. Michael Bell's the same way. He's a 50% three-point shooter, but he's only taking 38. He's 19 to 38. Barry Evans is 25 to 76 for 32.9%. They can make threes, but they don't shoot a lot of them. So I go back, and I'm getting to the switch part. I go back to, you're going to check and see early, can you make the three? I think you may see a lot, even though they're different in Clemson. I think you may see a lot of how they guarded Clemson. As we're really going to wall this off, we're not going to let your guards get there, and we're going to see if your bigs can hit pick and pop, not down to threes. So there's one thing. The thing's going to be, what do you do then if they make a couple? I think you've got to switch more. I think you're in a situation where you've got to. You can't drop it and let that guy take that, or you come out and hedge more, one of the two. But when I look at them outside of – now, they've got some different size. They got 6-foot guards. They got 6'6" perimeter players. But they do so much of the same thing. So I just wonder if this is a team – I kind of look at them and say, if there's a team you can switch to stay in front of, this might be them.
Closing out will be key. And Carolina has a size advantage in some respects. This could be one of those games where how Jaren Stevenson closes out could be a very big, small part of the game because he's probably going to give up some. His guy's going to get some threes because so many of them take threes. How they've been inconsistent with the closeouts, and I think a lot of it hasn't been. Some people misconstrue it as lack of effort or they're not dialed in. I think some of it's just where they are after a switch when the shooter gets the ball, and they got to recover, and it looks like they're a step slow when the switch kind of messed things up. I think
you
the
made
switching
that
is
case
dangerous.
the last time we spoke. You said you thought a lot of closeout issues were off switches.
Yeah. I think I bet you 90% of them are off switches, David.
Yeah.
And that could be an issue.
Well, if that's an issue, then if now that's up to the coaches. The coaches know that more than anybody. So I'm talking about every coach in that room, and not just Hubert Davis. I'm talking about whether it's Jeff Lebo, Pat Sullivan, Sean May, whoever it might be, to get in his ear and say, look, this team can shoot the three. If switching is going to cause a problem where we can't close out and they get good looks at three, they may shoot us out of the gym. Yeah. That's the one thing you can't happen. One way we said they would get behind, they didn't need to do that. If you look up and Virginia Commonwealth's made 12 threes, man, it's going to be a day that North Carolina fans will not want to remember for a long time. So if that is an issue, they need to get in his ear and say, look, we can't let's try it without the switching because we're getting killed in closeout. And if we can't close them out, this is going to be one of the better 3-point. That's something they can do. This is going to be one of the better 3-point shooting teams that we played against.
Or you could minimize the switching, drop Henry, and have Seth get on their leading scorer. His name is, I'm drawing a blank with his name. Terrence, is it Terrence?
But here's the thing, Terrence Hill.
So if you have
14.4, but and they just don't have that one guy. Like I said, they come at you. If they play Illinois,
it's their synchronicity, David.
I want you on Keaton Wagler. I want you on Keaton Wagler the same way you were on Darren Peterson, and you're not going to leave him. But we talked about committee, and that's kind of what VCU does. They've got quite a few of them can do it.
Which is why you have to disrupt their synchronicity. So Henry dropping, let's say Seth is on the leading scorer there, and the other three switch. Mm-hmm. You could possibly disrupt some things that way, throw them off, maybe force them to drive into Henry, and Henry kind of patrols the paint, not like Onyenso did the other day for Virginia, but enough to take that away from them and make them hesitant to get that far. And if they do, I think the switch and recover will be a little bit easier if the pass is going to be quicker. And the switch, the area in which the court that VCU uses is smaller. If they can shrink the court in that sense, I think they might not get caught in some of those situations with the switches.
It's going to be interesting to see, man. It's just hard to change it after you've guarded it one way all year. And the thing is, there's not been a ton of adjustments on what they've done. They've stuck with it. I mean, you go back and you look at them off the ball screen. Henry's standing in front of the rim. You can go back to the first game against Central Arkansas. 10 years ago it seems like, and then fast forward to now, and it's been the same thing. So it's just like saying if you're a college football coach and you're going into the playoffs and you say, we've run man to man all year long and it's not worked. We're going to play zone now or whatever. We've not blitzed all year. We're going to start blitzing. And you're taking a big risk.
Yeah, 100%. So something interesting came up in some discussions in the Q&A session with players after the Clemson game, and Noah did a piece on this, and I want to get your take on it. Carolina has had a lot of success when it has gone full-blown press. Not the mock press, not they made free throw mock press, but full-blown press. Yeah. Now, Mark Madsen said they were so successful because you don't see a guy like Caleb there, but they've been successful without him in the press, and their length really helps them a lot in the press now. My thinking is you don't have to be press all the time. I don't like when teams just press all the time because the other team, once they get a beat on it, the press is useless at that point. But I like flashing stuff, especially when the opponent is in the middle of a run. Try to flash it, change things, and see if you could get a cheap bucket, take them out of it a little bit, and maybe it ends the run quicker. I go back to Duke, 30-6. Do something different. Nothing really was done different. Go to Clemson with that long run, something else. Hubert says he loves to press when we've asked him about it. He says, we've got a perfect kind of team to press. We love to press. We know we can be very effective at it, but they only use it almost when it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something, if you were coaching this team or any team like them, would you flash that press every once in a while, especially if their team's kind of going some offensively, just to throw them out a little bit?
He likes to do it off dead balls. So
yeah, but it's not a full one, though.
Right. And most of the time you're going to see it off made foul shots. But I'll go back to the ACC tournament game when they played Clemson, and they're just going through the motions. And there's no energy. And what I'm saying is what everybody else is saying. It's what every analyst, it's what every fan said. There was just no energy, nothing. You pressed to pump some of that energy in. So I kept looking for it early in the second half. They're down double digits. And they had some opportunities. Of course, okay, he's getting ready to jump the press. They're going to speed this thing up. You know, they're going to get this team going a little bit. They're going to speed Clemson up because Clemson's just doing whatever they want to do. And it never came. You're waiting on it. They'll do it now. It never came. And like you said, it came later in the game. So absolutely, especially, like I said, when our team's just going through the motions, when there's just no enthusiasm, it's just blah. I'm going to jump in it.
If you could steal a basket here and there, it's so huge, especially this time of year. And I like what you said about the energy thing. I totally agree with that. I'm just a big fan of switching things up. And don't let them ever get comfortable. Don't ever let them think they know the drum beat. If other team offensively knows the drum beat, they're going to be very successful.
I'll tell you how big stealing one basket is. Illinois was the potential second round game. Illinois was 20-3 at one point. They finished up 24-8. So they lost 5 out of the last 8. Of those 5 losses, 4 were in overtime. So they lost 85-82 at Michigan State overtime, 92-90 Wisconsin overtime, 95-94 UCLA overtime, 91-88 Wisconsin overtime. So 4 of their last 9 games have been overtime. They've lost all 4 of them. So you talk about getting a bucket here or there, it's huge.
Especially when you don't shoot free throws well. Especially when you're a team that doesn't get a tremendous amount of production on the offensive glass. You've got to find other ways to get points. I've said all year that when you're not getting stuff in transition, you're not getting stuff in the backcourt because you don't press unless you're desperate, basically. If you're not hitting free throws, you're not getting second chance points, and you're not getting out in transition because of your defense, you put so much pressure on the offense to execute at such a high level. I think that's one of the reasons he calls a lot of set plays, because he figures, well, I know this can get us a shot if they do it right. That's his thinking, and it doesn't always work because their team knows what's happening as well. But it puts so much pressure to execute at such a pristine level to be so incredibly efficient in the half court. It's interesting. I've covered this team a lot in the last 5 years where there are games where in the half court they are very efficient. And then you look up at the scoreboard at halftime, they got 38 points because they're not getting stuff in transition. They're not getting second chance points. So when they go to the free throw line, they're shooting 68% from the free throw line. That's scoring those special teams, other types of points. So if you don't want to apply that much pressure to your half court offense, which is iffy sometimes, getting a bucket here and there, flashing that press, doing a half-court trap, the old scramble that I don't even think he teaches. I haven't seen them run the scramble in years. And getting a bucket, getting a cheap foul on a guard, one of their a star guard type of player, that's the kind of stuff I haven't seen from this team that if they were to use that and take a page out of coming back against Clemson as an example. It could serve them well, David. I don't think we're going to see it, but it can serve them well because being able to steal points this time of year, any time of year is big, but this time of year could be the difference whether you move on or you go home.
Preaching to the choir, buddy.
Preaching to the choir. So do you think this team has it in them if they were to flash enough against a team as athletic as VCU that they could actually affect them with the press?
We got a lot of ball handlers. They're averaging almost just about 10.5 turnovers a game. Now, here's the thing. A10's a good conference.
It is.
But they haven't seen, even without Caleb Wilson, they haven't seen North Carolina type athleticism that much. So I think playing against a mid-major type team, especially, I don't know that would rattle in Illinois, or if they got on down the road to Houston or somebody like that. But playing a mid-major team who's not – that's when you really want to throw the athleticism at them because they're not used to seeing it.
And the length.
They've been
playing
St. Bonaventures and Richmonds and teams like that, here for the last 2 months. So they've not – they played North Carolina State earlier in the year and lost. They beat Virginia Tech. That's been it as far as playing the high major type teams. North Carolina State's probably the best team they played this year. So they're not used to seeing, North Carolina type of athleticism. So I think that's another thing you've got to take into consideration.
They hung with State. I think they lost by 6, and they beat Virginia Tech.
Yeah, they beat Virginia Tech pretty handily. 18, I think it was.
Yeah. This is they're a good team, but I agree with you. They haven't seen that athleticism combined with the length, and I'd like to see that. So the quartet, in order for them to come out, they have to beat VCU and then beat either Penn or Illinois. A lot of Carolina fans, I think, were rather pessimistic coming in before the brackets were unveiled because they just assumed, well, whoever they play in the first round is going to kill them. Then once they saw the brackets, they realized, Illinois could cause some issues for them. They can create some matchups for them and stuff. They got some pretty good guards, a lot of length as well. But Carolina could do the same thing to them, and Illinois is not playing great right now. And they should be able to get by VCU if they go out and they play with the right kind of spunk that they need. Of course, Penn would be a similar situation, not as good as VCU. Can you see this? So a lot of Carolina fans, I think, are kind of thinking, well, maybe they can get to a Sweet 16. Maybe they can get to Houston, where they would, or I guess it would be Houston. Who would they play in the Sweet 16? Would it be Houston?
Houston.
Yeah, they'd have to play Houston in Houston. Well, good luck with that. But North Carolina's been the benefactor of playing a lot of regional games in its own state. So I guess that would be okay. Can you see them getting out of this weekend? Or does so much of it depend on a psyche shift from what we saw the last 2 games that it's really hard to expect it until you actually see it?
I think the odds are against it. I mean, there's a chance. I go back to the article I wrote last week, and it got quite a bit of attention, at least on the board, a lot of comments. And my summary was basically, we're not – you can't sit here and say for 100% surety that's not going to happen, but you've not seen anything from this team or from the program the last couple of years to give you a lot of confidence. Yeah. I had seen somewhere the winning percentage. I think North Carolina is like a 65% chance to win game 1, and then to get to the Sweet 16, it was down almost, I think, in the 20s, between maybe 25 and 30%. So I think that's probably a realistic. I mean, there's a chance, but you're talking probably about 1-3, 1-4 to get through both. And Illinois has struggled here of late a little bit. But I think the same thing we said about North Carolina recharging, we can say about them. They got put out in around the 32 last year, and they had a good team. They got put out in around 32 by Kentucky. And I think that's kind of stuck with them. and you look at some guys they have, the Ivasic brothers, Stojakovic, Keaton Wagler. They've got a good team. And I'm just looking here at the stats. I mean, they're out rebounding opponents by 10 a game, 9.6. Rebounding's been an issue for North Carolina. They turn the ball over less than 10 times a game. They made 98 more foul shots than the opponents attempted, and they're playing in the Big Ten. So I think offensive efficiency is one of the top in the country. So, you look at them, they're only giving up 41% shooting all year long. They do a lot of things well. I mean, they're a good basketball team. They're well coached. And I think when you looked at potential threes, people were kind of saying, okay, we hope they play Nebraska. That might be the team we would want to see them go against. I think probably Illinois, Michigan State, Iowa State. I think there were a couple on there that the fans I shouldn't paint this with broad brush. I know for me, teams that we probably want to stay away from. So I think Illinois, they, like you said, they can match up some things to Illinois. Man, Illinois is a really good team.
They are a really good team, and Illinois is going to also bring a lunch pail out there. And that comes back to the question about Carolina's fight, bringing the energy and all that kind of stuff, and how they respond. I thought they had some energy early against Clemson, but Clemson made a little push and they didn't respond, just like with Duke. Duke threw a couple of punches early in the second half, and they went down. So I could see this team getting through, playing well, doing a lot of entertaining things to beat VCU, and then really struggling on Saturday against Illinois. That's kind of the way I see this thing probably playing out. It's a pretty big task right now to ask this team, okay, get through the first round, which would be a good win for them. It would be a good win if it was November, beating VCU on a neutral floor, and then taking on Illinois. It's a big task for me. I do think there's some matchup things, and if they shoot lights out, of course, they got a chance, but I could see Illinois taking some of that stuff away as well.
And they're going to have, North Carolina's going to have, I don't know how much of a home court advantage, but, I know your hope all year long was that Greenville in the first round. So congratulations, you got your wish. When the West bracket, and you said a few minutes before they announced on Selection Sunday, you said, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to go to Portland all week. And it didn't happen, and they go to Greenville. So who knows, man? I mean, you're 1 for 1 right now. But I wonder, too, if the home court, how much they will have. It didn't look to me like North Carolina and Clemson, like there was a huge home court advantage for North Carolina. I mean, the crowd got in. North Carolina didn't give them a reason to get into it. I know they got into it late. But I wonder right now with a fan base, if North Carolina was a 1 seed or a 2 seed or whatever, Caleb was back and they played in Greenville, this place would be on fire to go watch. But I wonder just if there's just kind of some fatigue right now.
I think there is.
You may not quite have the following to go to Greenville that you might expect.
Well, the ACC tournament, historically, it's pretty evenly – now, things are different with the new ACC, but things are pretty evenly divided on the quarterfinal day, and then a lot of teams lose, and their fans will sell their remaining tickets to the fans that are waiting outside. So often those fans are wearing Carolina blue. In Greenville in 2017, Duke was there then, Duke's there now. But South Carolina was also there. And that's interesting because when Carolina played their second round game against Arkansas, you had the South Carolina and Duke fans rooting against Carolina, although South Carolina fans had to plug their nose some because they probably don't like Arkansas too much. But there were a lot of Carolina fans there. And then, of course, when Duke played South Carolina in the second game, you had both Carolina fans just rooting against Duke. It was very, very one-sided with the fan distribution. I would think that because it's in Greenville and you don't have South Carolina there, a lot of North Carolina fans will probably pick up a lot of tickets they'll probably be pretty well represented in the second round. But so will Duke. Duke fans travel. Duke fans are all over the place, just like Carolina fans. I would bet that in the second round on Saturday, assuming that Duke plays the first game, and as the first seed, they might end up playing like a noon game on Saturday to get out of there, maybe a preference by Shire, maybe throwing him a salvo after all of his complaints for tip-off times in Charlotte this past week. If that's the case, I think Carolina will have a pretty good contingent for its second game. But they got to get there first. I'm not convinced that they will beat VCU, David. They can beat VCU. Last thing I want to hit on, we got to talk about.
I want to say, let me say this too. I mean, if you look at, I want to throw this in because this has got to be considered because we've spoken about North Carolina. If they don't advance past the round of 32, that it'll be the third time in 4 years. But we got to look at Brad Underwood at Illinois too, and I think we all think Brad Underwood's a good coach, but he's been at Illinois now since 2018, and he's got to the second weekend once. So that was 2024. He got to the Elite Eight. Now, he had a 6-loss team that in 2021 that went into the NCAA tournament and lost in a round of 32. He had a 9-loss team the next year that lost in a round of 32. They were 20-12 in 2023, got beat in the first round. And like I said last year, they had a good team, not a great team, and lost to Kentucky. So, 23-24, he's been passed around a 32 once himself. So that may come into it too. Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, we talked about if he don't get that'll be once in the last 4 years. So Hubert's actually, got a better track record as far as that goes. So are some of the doubts that we're having based on this year, but also based on past history, the Illinois have some of them too, because you can't, Brad Underwood's a great coach, but you can't call him Mr. March.
Hubert's 8-3 in the NCAA tournament. Last part, and I don't want to go too long on this, but we can close it because people want to know. It's the chatter, and we're going to hit on the chatter some. I think we have an obligation when the overwhelming number of our people who post on our board, only a small percentage post, but you can tell folks are reading it. They're talking about the apathy. They're talking about I said before the tournament, before we saw the brackets, a lot of Carolina fans like, they're just going to get killed. Doesn't matter, all that kind of stuff. How quickly can Hubert get them back on the pre-apathetic, in a pre-apathetic mindset? And how much does a loss to VCU or a blowout loss if they're eliminated on Saturday, how much does that settle the apathy even more? Because apathy is after anger. I think there is some anger, but I haven't heard or seen the word apathy until after Clemson. And the last week it's been talked about a lot. First time I've seen that with the Hubert era. What are your thoughts on all that?
It's almost like the ketchup's out of the squeeze bottle. There's going to be a large contingent you're not going to get back. And I think there's some you will. Like I said, I think there's a bunch that you're not. I felt like this year, and then it's almost like, you remember and this is a bad analogy, but it was almost like, you go back to Desert Storm, years ago, and you go in, it looks good, but you don't have an exit strategy. Yeah. So that's what I kind of think of here, because I said it last year. After that, I said he's got to get out of the first weekend. I've said it all year long. He's got to get to the Sweet 16. But, okay, if he doesn't go to the Sweet 16, then what? I don't know. I'm saying it to say it. I really don't have an exit strategy. And we know what the exit strategy is.
Yeah.
So I think he's got to get out of this first weekend. And let me start even closer to the Forest.
Yeah.
If he gets beat the first game to VCU, I think it's going to be bad. I think toxic's an understatement. Look, I covered Kentucky.
I think it's already kind of toxic, right?
Yeah, I covered Kentucky when it got like this, and they had three first-round draft picks, 2 lottery picks. They had Dillingham, Shepard, all those guys, and they got beat by Oakland in the first round. And it was just like nobody at Kentucky, Barnhart or any of those guys, none of them were going to pull the plug. And the fans were just like in sackcloth and ashes because they thought he was going to be back. And it got to that point where it was just depression, statewide depression. And I wonder here if they get beat in the first round. I mean, I'm not making that up.
I know. We've talked a lot about that.
Call in sick, not go to work. Well, what's wrong? What's wrong? Get flu? No, Cal Perry's going to be back. So, it's so if you're here, I think if you get beat the second round, it's not quite as bad. It's bad, but it's not quite as bad. If you get beat in the first round by VCU on top of what anxiety coming into the year and lack of excitement and all that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it being worse. And then if you get beat by Illinois in the second round, you're going to lose more of them. And I think you're going to have a vast majority of fans. And you may have the majority now. You've got a lot of them. I don't know a percentage, but I think you're going to have a huge, huge percentage if they don't get through this first round that want to see a change. If they lose that first round, I don't know. It's like you're a candidate. You may even vote for the other guy yourself. So it's going to be, man, I'm telling you, it's going to be interesting to see. I think he'll be back. I think if they get beat in the second round, he'll be back. But I think that seat's going to be a scorcher. And I never thought it was that hot before. I thought a lot of the hot seat stuff was overblown a little bit because he was never on the hot seat last year. They were putting in a GM where everybody thought he was on the hot seat. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But I said he's got to get through the Sweet 16. But I'm telling you what, if they get beat that first round, I don't know what will happen. I couldn't sit here and say for sure. I think he'll be back. I think it's going to be very interesting. So if he can get through to the Sweet 16, if he gets through to the Sweet 16 and I think it's pertinent that he does. I think he can just tell everybody to calm down. But I don't think a lot of those. I think it'd take almost another Final Four run.
If he gets to the Sweet 16 without Caleb, you could say, look what he did without Caleb. They're 5-3 without him, and they would be 7-4 with a lot of difficult opponents on there. If they lose, I'll tell you this. I can only say so much, and I think I've told you this when we weren't recording, but when Caleb initially went down, my ears heard some chatter that, okay, he's safe. You can't punish him for Caleb going down. But now that they've played for more than a month without him, and they've seen certain aspects of maybe the coaching they don't like, or use of personnel. Maybe the team hasn't been as inspired at times as they would like to see, especially the last 2 games. I talked to one person, they said they actually think that they've learned more about what kind of coach he is without Caleb than had Caleb never gotten hurt. And that should be evaluated as well. And this person's opinion was it wouldn't bode well for him. I don't know. I thought that they were climbing to meet Caleb, and then the rug was pulled out, and it's a difficult thing for anybody to handle. How much do you think the administration, anybody who makes a decision, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people in the room that do this. I think there would be channels that would be used if something were to happen, David. But how much is not having Caleb a factor in people weighing and seeing, okay, give him the benefit of the doubt? Or have you seen enough now without Caleb to really get an evaluation of where he is as a coach?
I still think they should have beat Clemson. Well, I mean, Clemson was down their best post player, who's not as good as Caleb. I still think you ought to beat Clemson. You certainly, and that's arguable. But it's not arguable on whether or not North Carolina should beat VCU.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's.
I agree.
There's nothing to be said there. So, I just, from things that I've heard, and you hear more than I do, but from things that I've heard, I just don't know that there's anybody sitting in that room that'll pull the plug on him.
Well, I don't. I agree with you on that.
They want him. They want him to win. He is loved in the athletic department, and they want to see him succeed. And besides that, they're all North Carolina people. They're UNC people. It's a family structure.
Yeah.
So I don't know who would be the person in that room to say, we got to do this.
You and I talked the other night, so I can only say so much right now, but
that's an opinion. That's an opinion.
Yes. Yeah, that's your opinion.
That's what I
think that it's different. This would be handled differently than if it was, Harvey Schmedlap at University of Iowa, right? Old Harvey, man. Harvey never gets he gets the short end of the stick all the time.
Thanks for Harvey a shout out.
If your last name is Schmedlap,
yeah.
Well, it would be handled differently. I know because I've been told multiple times over the course of the last 9 months that Hubert does not want to be hated. The program means so much to him. Yeah. It's been in his DNA for half a century. He's 55 years old. It's been in his DNA since the 76 Olympics. His uncle, even before his uncle was playing at Carolina, and he rode home with a bunch of Carolina Olympians from Montreal and all. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. He's had it. He's been a part of it ever since then. He has the DES pin and lapel. He's got 24 for Walter Davis right here. When he talks about his reverence and love for the university and his service to the university, it's not BS. It's genuine. And then if you look at having the kind of person that he is and his successes in life and how he comports himself in many, many ways, he's exactly who all these people of power would like to see succeed and have at the front door of the university. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's a lot of fear about you go get somebody else, what happens? There's a ton of fear about that, ton of concern. But one thing that can change all that is Hubert and Leslie. Hubert does not want to be hated. And there's a lot of vitriol right now. And his wife, I'm sure, sees it, hears it. I know Elijah's probably on social media and probably hears it and sees it, and he's in the program. And the other players do as well. In fact, Jonathan Powell went out of his way last Thursday just to say, hey, this is on us. It's not on the coaches. It's not their fault. So they're hearing it 100%. And they're now starting to speak up and defend. I don't really ever recall hearing that at North Carolina, but we're hearing it now. So if someone doesn't want to be hated, and knowing about Hubert as you do from a distance, but you still know, and you and I have talked a lot, is that something to think about? Is that something that fans should maybe back off and recognize that they could force him out if they want to make a decision, but it's really going to be maybe up to him and how he views his future, his relationship with the university for the rest of his life?
No, I don't think fans should back off because they love the program too.
I should have worded that differently. But go ahead.
They want to see the team win more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of them probably attitude would be, hey, if you're in the way, then you need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And so you've got donors who give a lot of money to that program. You've got season ticket holders, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So you've got all this in. So no, I don't think the ones that are unhappy should back off at all because you're thinking about somebody's feelings. Because here's the bottom line. When you take that job, in any job, you're hired to be fired.
Yeah, sure.
And I know this. I know this. Buzz Peterson told me this years ago. Buzz Peterson went to Dean Smith and said, "Coach, I want to get into coaching. I want to get into college coaching." And Coach Smith told him, he tried to talk him out of it. And he said, "Okay." He said, "There's two things you've got to realize." He said, number one, he said, "Can you live without it?" He said, "If you can live without it and not have to do it, then you should not get into it." He said, "But if you have to have it," he said, "are you willing to go anywhere in the country? Are you willing to live in Montana for the rest of your life or pack up and move every 2 years?" So you have to understand that that's what a business, like Jerry Glanville said when he got hired by the Atlanta Falcons, they give him a 5-year rebuilding project and a 2-year contract. So that goes with it. And the other thing is that these guys make a lot of money. I mean, they're going to have parachute packages. They make a lot of money. So it's not like they can fire me down at my job and I'm not going to get a dime out of it. Just give me 5 minutes to get everything clear. Give me a cardboard box and get out of the building, right? So in this situation, it's different. And so that's why I'm saying these guys are well compensated. There's a lot on the line. You got to understand that when you're a coach, you're going to be the loneliest guy in town. And that just goes, I don't care if you coach high school, that's the case. That goes with the territory. So, and at a place like North Carolina, man, as soon as you get in there, man, you're jumping on the stovetop. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I should have worded what I said differently. I'm with you 100% on that. But I think it's something for fans to think about when they think about the administration. They're candy asses. They're not going to do anything. I think there's a lot more to this situation.
And I'll tell you this.
Than just a couple people saying you're done. I think there's more to it than that.
Right. There is more. That's why I don't think, like I said, I can't picture unless they lose the first game and it totally goes off the rails. But like I said, I just can't picture who in that room would pull the plug. But I want to say this too. And the Duke success does not help matters. No. Hubert didn't have a good week last week. You lose the first round. The team that puts you out, Duke goes with without two starters, runs them out of the building, and then wins the ACC tournament without it. They're going to be a 1 seed. So, and it's definitely not going to go over well if, once again, you're in the same building in Greenville and they advance to the Sweet 16, you get put out. So,
you're even there that day.
So, it's that has not worked well because right now Duke's got it rolling and North Carolina's just trying to find her way.
Yeah.
And North Carolina fans don't want, that's not permissible. It's not acceptable. So North Carolina fans, that's not the reality that they want to have to live with.
I think it's understandable. If you take that job, you should know it 100%. Yeah. And if you're a person of power and you help get him into that job, that's something you got to understand as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any last thoughts?
It's going to be an interesting week. It's going to be a very interesting week. Before, during, and well, I guess after, if it's Illinois, it'll go into next week. So it may be interesting 2 weeks. But it's really a place that I know since I've worked here, and you've covered North Carolina beat a lot longer than I have. It's a place that's probably unfamiliar because I don't think you've had a situation where the future has been as cloudy, and it may be based on this 1 week. These 2 games like you say, you can kind of exhale a little bit if they can win 2 games and kind of move on. But if they don't, you don't know. I think it's going to be fascinating. And like I said, it's virgin territory. It really is.
I have heard from enough Carolina fans that they love the Tar Heels so much, and this is what they say. I'll paraphrase. Harvey Smedlapp's cousin, Joe Schmo, says to me, I love Carolina basketball so much, I want them to get killed by VCU.
Yeah, I've heard it.
That's sort of the Kentucky mindset that you were talking about at the end of the Calipari period. Real fast, I don't even know if you do picks or not. Do you do Final Four? Do you do that kind of stuff, or you just stay away from that? You're not much of a picks guy, are you?
The only reason is people put these, I think so-and-so is going to beat so-and-so. They've never seen any of those teams play. The one thing I do, and you can be proud of this, Andrew, I stay in my lane. So I watch a little bit of teams, some of those on off nights, but my whole focus is North Carolina and covering that. And I look at some teams in ACC. I watch Vanderbilt some, and I watch Alabama some because just where I live, knowing the coaches and knowing the staffs, and especially since I covered Vanderbilt at one time, and I've still really got a lot of friends there. So
it's a fun team too.
I really like Florida going in. I think they had a setback. I think those guards are subject to get turned over. Houston's defense against them worries me. I think Duke will get through. I think Arizona will get through. Michigan's had an injury. They're not the same. I'm going with Arizona. I'm going to take Arizona over Duke in the national championship game.
I haven't gone so far to do my whole picks, but I know that I've got Arizona. They are awfully impressive. Mm-hmm. And you talk about pressure. I couldn't believe it when I was reading stuff the other day about how the Arizona fans are putting a lot of pressure on Tommy Lloyd to win a title. Yeah. He's in year 5.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he's not been past the Sweet 16. You got to remember, Sean Miller had that thing where he went to about 5 Elite Eights in a row or something like that. Yeah. And he never got past it and couldn't get to the Final Four. And Lloyd's been Sweet 16s. I mean, and he's had he's winning there with like some loaded teams.
Sean Miller took Xavier to a regional final, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I've got Arizona winning.
So Arizona's had a run of just tremendous basketball teams that have not been able to get to, almost like Purdue was for a couple of years of Outbound Painter. They've almost been that same boat.
I like this club, but it's the NCAA tournament. Crazy stuff's going to happen. I can't wait for it. I'm going to be in Greenville with Noah. We're heading there on Tuesday. Hubert has a press conference Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock after that, after I file him. Heading to Greenville. Love it, man. I love this time of year. I'm really interested in seeing what the Tar Heels look like. Our comments about Hubert, I'd like to know what you guys think, but please keep it respectful. Keep it thoughtful. Just the highly emotional stuff. Try to get away from that because I want to get more. I want to read opinions that are not totally laced in emotion about that one way or the other, whether you support them or whether you don't support them. And so much of the discourse has been pretty heated the last few weeks, but certainly over the last week. Tar Heels and VCU Thursday, 6:50 tip. I believe it's on TNT from the Bond Secures Wellness Arena. Can't wait to type that 300 times in the next few days. I'm AJ. He's David. Like, share, and subscribe, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.